The year was 2004. I was on a train going somewhere. I can't remember, I was 4. But I can tell you, I was very bored. Being a 4-year-old, I was complaining to my poor, tired parents that I had nothing to do for the entire journey. But before I could become a whining pain in the ass, my parents surprised me by pulling out a Nintendo Game Boy Advanced SP model, with one game nestled in the cartridge slot. That game was Rayman Advance, the Game Boy Advance port of the original Rayman. And it was then and there that my younger self fell in love with gaming. I played Rayman Advance so much, and I absolutely loved it. I mean, it kicked my ass, but this was the first video game I ever owned, so let's just say I wasn't very skilled. But my younger self just couldn't get over the fact that I got to be in total control of this, admittedly strange-looking man, but I was in command. I could make him jump. I could make him crawl. I could make him smack enemies in the face. I could make him die a whole bunch. It was mesmerizing, and that's where it all started for me. Rayman would inspire me to try all sorts of other games for the system, like Crash Bandicoot XS, Mario Kart Super Circuit, even my first 2D Sonic games, Sonic Advance. Not quite my first game in that series though, that was Heroes. It also, of course, made me want to play anything with Rayman's face on it, and in the early 2000s, it felt like Rayman was going to be around forever. It wasn't long after getting my DS that I got Rayman DS, and yeah, really, my first experience with Rayman 2 was the bloody DS version. But I didn't know at the time, I was just excited to play more Rayman. Then, on my Xbox, I'd get Rayman 3, one of my most beloved games of all time for reasons I'll have to try and explain. But then we got Rayman Raving Rabbids, which I absolutely loved because not only did I find the Rabbids funny, I was 6, leave me alone, but I had it on the Wii and could play it with family. I remember getting Rayman 3D for the 3DS and being confused as to why it was the same as Rayman DS, but again, at the time, I didn't care. I was having too much fun getting to play it with an analog stick. I always seem to have got the worst versions of these games looking back, didn't I? Like Rayman Advance, Rayman DS, and 3D. 3 was 3, but when Rayman Origins rolled around, I got the 3DS version when I had a perfectly working PS3. Why did I do that? At least with Legends, there's an argument for the Wii U version being a good version to play. I do own it on the Switch now though, so yeah, I have a history with this franchise, and every year I see Ubisoft doing nothing with it, it hurts me. Because people like Rayman, guys. You can tell. I mean, can you see how many people just bought Mario and Rabbids Sparks of Hope just for the Rayman DLC that's coming? As much as I miss the guy, the fanbase very much keeps Rayman alive through fan projects and the recent data leak of the scrapped Rayman 4, which looks absolutely nuts, but it wasn't meant to be. But, okay. Rayman was created by Michael Ansel, who would go on to become the game's lead designer. He actually conceptualized Rayman in the 1980s while learning how to draw, compose music, and code so he could pursue his desire to create video games. And Rayman was named after Ansel's interest in the technique of ray tracing. Now, Ansel would go on to become one of the earliest hires in Ubisoft's history, after his animation skills caught the attention of higher-ups. This eventually led to Rayman getting greenlit for the Atari ST after pitching the game, but this version would be cancelled due to the lack of buzz around the system. Ansel then turned to the Super NES CD-ROM, but this device was cancelled by Nintendo in 1993, so development would begin again for the Super Nintendo. However, this still wasn't meant to be, as it was decided the SNES cartridges wouldn't be able to handle their vision for Rayman, so yet again, the project was scrapped. A prototype for this version did eventually drop, and oh my god. You know what? Thank God this wasn't finished. I hate it. Please get it off my screen. Finally, Rayman would be produced for the Atari Jaguar, PlayStation, and Sega Saturn in 1995, and while all three versions are mostly the same, the Atari version is considered to be the worst by fans. The Saturn version apparently has better sound quality, but I'm happy to stick with the PlayStation version. Hey, you know what? It might have been pretentious to say that the SNES couldn't handle Rayman, but the wait did pay off, because to this day, this game looks phenomenal. The animation was just a cut above the rest at the time, and thanks to the chosen style, it's aged like a fine wine as opposed to any 3D games on the PlayStation. The world around Rayman bounces and flourishes with life, the enemies are super expressive, and Rayman himself is so personable. Yeah! And as long as you avoid the Atari version, the soundtrack is an absolute gem. There's so much about this soundtrack that I love. The music quality is amazing, taking full advantage of CD technology to produce a soundtrack that can either sell the wonder of Rayman's world, or set the mood for a giant scorpion attacking you. It's incredibly varied, and I love the way that the music all rises to a point before quieting down, and no, I don't know what the term is for that, I'm not a music student. Anyway, I'm gonna shut up because you need to have a listen. Also, the sound effects are so damn satisfying. Collecting ting sounds great. Hitting enemies sounds sweet. And even just things like the helicopter sound effect. I can't explain it, it's just nice. Now, it may seem odd that I'm bringing up the production values first, but there's a reason for that. Yes, there is certainly a reason for that. Christ, where to begin? This is the world of Rayman, the Glade of Dreams. This is a peaceful and tranquil land filled with strange creatures and mystical landscapes. I love the world of Rayman. I always have. It's just so visually appealing no matter the game. From thick forests to lands made out of pencils, everyone is happy thanks to the harmony brought by the Great Protoon. However, this would be disturbed when the Great Protoon is stolen by the evil, get ready for this one, Mr. Dark. Yes, his name is Mr. Dark. In a series with an incredible creative world, detailed character designs and superb atmosphere, the best they could come up with for this guy is Mr. Dark. Wow. Well, his character is about as thin as his name, as we learn next to nothing about Mr. Dark, or anyone really, not even Rayman. He's sort of just there. I mean, I get that he'd rather be at the beach, who wouldn't, but it's definitely a little shallow. Anyway, I got off track. Mr. Dark steals the Great Protoon and imprisons the tiny beings that maintain harmony across the planet, Electoons. The only one to stand up to him is Batilla the Fairy, but she fails, so it's up to Sloppy Seconds over here to finish the job. I totally dig how the game starts with this magician catching us up on the events that are taking place, as when the gameplay starts we're just thrown into the thick of it, seeing Mr. Dark watch us through his binoculars. I guess he's got nothing better else to do now he's taken over the world. I love the detail of the world map being the perspective of Mr. Dark watching us. That's really cool. The magician is the only character who is fully voiced in this game, and the performance is amazing. It really sets the stage for the kind of mood that Rayman is all about. It's weird, but a good weird, if you get me. The magician and Batilla the Fairy are the only two characters we consistently meet along our journey. Oh, except this photographer? To this day, I haven't got a clue who this guy is or why he's so committed to taking our picture, but he's certainly there. The magician doesn't have any dialogue past the beginning, which is a shame because he's pretty likable, but we do bump into Batilla the Fairy a few times, who grants Rayman with powers to complete his journey. Why Batilla can't just give us all the powers in one go is puzzling, especially as this bitch lost to Mr. Dark, she knows how dangerous he is, and oh look, she got kidnapped, for fuck's sake, probably just before giving Rayman nuclear powers, I'm sure. So after rescuing every Electoon, Jesus Christ, we'll get there, Rayman confronts Mr. Dark one-on-one, where he nearly kills our limbless hero, until the Electoons we freed come in at the last moment and grant us our powers back. Then Mr. Dark remembers that he left the front door unlocked on his condo and he just leaves. Okay, I think he transforms into all these bosses, but it really does look like he just leaves. With Mr. Dark gone, Rayman rescues Batilla and saves the Great Protoon, restoring balance to the world and giving Rayman a chance to get back to the beach. It's a very simple story, and honestly, I think the only reason any of these characters are remotely likable is because of how well animated they are. The sprite work in this game is great. Now, as any Rayman fan knows, Rayman 2 would totally abandon every character in this game in favour of a new cast, but don't think that it's a reboot or anything. While it may be easy to assume that the Electoons and the Great Protoon are the same as the Lums from future games, this isn't so. Later games would elaborate on this further, but this is all we have for now. I really wish, the rest of this review could be me having a nostalgic gush over the game that got me into gaming, but alas, that's not the case. Before that though, I know I said Rayman Advance was the version I first played, but I'm recording the PS1 version as it's what I own. And word to the wise, again I may have nostalgia for it, but do not play the Game Boy Advance version. I'll talk more about it later, but you'll thank me, trust me. Anyway, Rayman is a 2D platformer where you must travel across 6 different worlds to save the Electoons and defeat Mr. Dark and his lair in the Great Candy Plateau. Now you may start off basic with the Dream Forest, filled with lush jungles, giant plums and killer mosquitoes. Guess if you can class that as basic. But before long you'll be riding on maracas with rocket thrusters and being pushed about by sentient trumpets in Bandland, be dealing with giant evil rocks in the Blue Mountains, platforming on pencils and dodging people riding flying saucepans in Picture City, and screaming your ass off at Joe for putting these balls so far apart in the caves of Scops. The Candy Chateau only has one level, and the aesthetic is really cool, but 90% of players never saw this world. I guarantee it, and you'll see why, but just keep that in mind. But yeah, the levels are far from your standard affair, and it's part of why I love Rayman so much. It's different, but not in a sort of try-hard kind of way. No, it feels natural. When you start up a new world, you get a nice image of Rayman loving his life in these lands, and his goofy character design fits with the vibe of the Glade of Dreams. You'll never catch me saying Rayman looks bad. The game though. So, when you start up, Rayman can't do anything except walk, jump, and crouch, and he really fucking commits to it too. Sure, he got low. He's a little slow for my liking, but the general control is mostly pretty good unless you're dealing with tiny platforms. Rayman may be animated great, but sometimes this fucks with my perception and I end up dying as a result. But it's not really a problem unless you're dealing with slippery, tiny platforms over bottomless pits. We'll get there. It isn't long until you start getting some upgrades though. By simply progressing, you'll meet Patilla the Fairy, who grants Rayman powers, the first being able to put those detached limbs to use and throw his fists. You can simply tap the button for a short punch with low power, or hold it down to charge Rayman fist and send it flying. I just love how they used his character design to give him a way of attacking like that. On paper, it's basic, but it just works for what Rayman is. In the levels, you can find powers for your fists, the golden ones upping your attack power, and the S fists improving your speed and reach of the throw. You can also find P bubbles to extend your health. These go away after death though, so watch out. Rayman will then gain the exciting ability to hang from ledges. Now, why does he need a power-up to do that? Is it giving his fingers little biceps to hold his weight? Anyway, it is a lifesaver and is something not many 2D games incorporate, so that's nice. Next we have the ability to swing from these hoop things by throwing our fists at them, and this is fun in concept, but in reality falls flat on its face for a number of reasons. For one, actually starting the swing is a pain in the ass, as I can't count the amount of times Rayman just decides, nah, I'm just going to drop now. And two, trying to get the correct momentum from the swing is harder than it needs to be. This isn't a problem exclusive to the swinging, but it is an annoyance, especially with these red ones that fall as you hang on to them. Ugh. Luckily, we next get the ability to turn Rayman's hair into a helicopter for a second to help with longer jumps and accuracy. And not only is this a godsend, but just look at him. That's so clever. I love Rayman, he's so cool. The last ability is another that confuses me is why we need magic to do it, but Rayman can run faster. But I won't complain too much as it speeds up backtracking and lets us make much longer jumps. So yeah, Rayman certainly improves as the game goes along, but none of that will prepare you for the onslaught of challenges Rayman will have to face to beat this game. Let's drop the illusion here. Rayman is fucking impossible. Well, maybe not quite impossible, but it can feel like it for so many reasons. The bright and colourful graphics may make you think this is a game that is a fun romp for the whole family, but let me tell you, this game will destroy you. I'm not even really sure where to start, so let's just take this one step at a time. The game. It starts so good. Travelling through the Dream Forest is so much fun, riding on giant plums across water and avoiding all enemy contact until we get our first upgrade. The combat may be simple, but it's satisfying to land a hit and hear that watching the enemy going absolutely flying, leaving nothing behind but a pair of bouncing eyes. Every level here is so creative. Anguish Lagoon has our first boss fight, this Mosquito, and he's fast, but it's a good first boss, and as a reward, we get to ride on his back and shoot enemies. It's great. The Swamps of Forgetfulness has this cool gimmick where you plant magic beans, which turn into platforms, and plum riding is taken to its extreme when riding at high speeds downhill. Look, even Rayman is loving it. These first 3 levels really break us in well, and it teaches us how secrets are found too. By standing in certain spots, you can trigger things to appear, signified by this sound. For these first few levels, you are absolutely challenged, but it's all fun and rewarding. It's the final level of the Dream Forest where things start to take a turn for the worse. This level is pretty long, and has some sections that I don't find pleasing. Like this chase with a new Mosquito that gets awfully close to you and really doesn't give you much breathing room. Then there's this disgusting creature that is just a nightmare to get past. You can't even kill it, you just have to time your jump right, but that is so hard to do, like fuck this thing. Then we have a boss that is probably a little too challenging for how early on we are, but oh man, this is just the beginning. Banland. I mean, what do I say? I like how it looks, I have some praise. I like the fairies that turn Rayman mini, makes for some fun puzzle solving. I like these flying monks who we can platform off, that's fun. Okay, that's all I've got, because every good idea in Bandland is surrounded by terrible and punishing level design. There's instant kill spiky music notes everywhere, eyes that shoot lightning, and these bugs that don't seem to be working on the same combat system that we are. These maracas that are also rockets were a great idea on paper, but it's so hard to steer them and so hard to see what's ahead. Christ. Then we have the sliding levels, which, again, is a fun idea, but issue 1. It wants you to make big jumps to break cages constantly, and these jumps are so hard to get right consistently. It's a similar issue I have with the momentum on swinging. The next part of this level has you getting blown about by trumpets to push you in a direction, meaning all you have to focus on is the jumping. Again, say it with me, fun in concept, but Ubisoft, did these platforms need to be this small? Could we not have made them a tad bigger? This just turns what could have been a fun, memorable moment into a frustrating experience. Then we get to deal with tiny slippery platforms while also trying to account for the ridiculous amount of knockback that Rayman suffers upon taking a hit. It's absolutely crazy and you have no control during the animation. Side note, I love how Trumpet Man here just storms off when you piss him off. But it's after this we get the ability to glide with Rayman's hair. Things are not going to get any easier, Rayman. You're telling me. The boss fight of this area is challenging, but I'll say now, most of these bosses are only as hard as they are because of the fact you only get 3 hit points after death. It just makes all these bosses way more tedious than they may have been otherwise. The Blue Mountains. When you thought it couldn't get any worse, it did. The first area of this level leaves such an immediately bad impression, and you know what? 90% of that is because of these fucking lava rocks. Who on God's green earth thought these were a good idea? Not only can these rock pricks just lob them at you with annoyingly precise aim, but when they hit the ground, they explode in all different directions. It's not so bad if it's just the one, but frequently that's not the case as the game needlessly spams them. The Hard Rocks level once again shows me how unreliable the swinging is, and it contains the worst jump in the game. This cloud bounce that really shows that momentum doesn't work properly. On these bouncy clouds, you're supposed to be able to press jump as it goes up to send Rayman flying, but it rarely works as intended. The jump here is so precise, and the worst part is you've got this rock dude coming back to life so many times that he puts Jesus to shame. Oh, come on. Piss off. Fuck. Oh my god, grab it. Yes, yes! Oh my god, why? The next stage, the Stone Peaks, give us an interesting temporary power-up, Infinite Flight. Say it with me, it's fun in concept, but the level is absolutely filled with spikes and it doesn't control all that well. If half of Rayman's body goes off the bottom of the screen, he dies. Why? That doesn't happen in something like Kirby. And then, they have this part where you have to try and cut the rope using your hair as a blade. Fucking say it with me, cool in concept, but why is the timing so tight? It's so hard to cut both ropes in time when I'm dealing with obstacles, and the fact I can't just stay in one place. It just doesn't stop, does it? The boss is another hard one, and while the strategy is something you can get down, again these lava rocks make it a very unenjoyable experience. Eraser Plains. A level made out of woodwork and stationery, and they couldn't just make it fun. Well, the level design throughout is just irritating, and the first level gets a boss which is such a pain in the ass to deal with, again with just 3 hit points. You can get the Infinite Flight here as a power-up, just thought I'd mention that. No. That's damn appropriate. You know what though, credit where it's due, Eraser Plains isn't great, but it probably has some of the most inoffensive sections compared to the other worlds, and you know what, other than the swinging section and the overwhelming boss fight, Space Mama's Crater is a fun level. In fact, the last few levels from here through the Caves of Scops are actually alright. They aren't easy, far from it, but the design feels far more fair for the most part. The Dark Room is fairly fun, the UFO riding is fun, these stages actually have good moments. Well, until that part where you have to jump on Joe's little water balloons while trying to avoid these fish that may as well be homing torpedoes, they're so fast. Mr. Scop is challenging, but nothing compared to what you've gone through to get here. Oh look, it's Batilla the Fairy getting captured by Mr. Dark. Let's just end this. Wait, what? Why can't I get there? I can see the icon for his stage. I've beaten all the levels, haven't I? What's going on? Have you realized it yet? So, in order to beat Mr. Dark and save the Great Brotoon, we need to save the Electoons, right? Okay, well in order to do that, you have to break open these cages, and there's 6 in every level for a grand total of 102 cages in the whole game. You have to backtrack to all the levels with new powers to get all the cages, but that's fine. I'm sure you only need a certain amount to progress, and I probably only need 1 or 2 more, right? I mean, I only needed 70 of the 120 power stars to reach Bowser in Mario 64, so how many of the 102 cages do you need to break to reach Mr. Dark? Every single one. I'm not kidding. You have to break every single fucking cage in this game. A game that is filled with terrible level design, awful enemy placement, and a game that expects you to do all of this with a very limited set of lives and continues. And it not only wants you to survive the trials of just beating the levels, but it wants you to scour every single stage top to bottom and find the even more painful parts of the levels just to find these goddamn cages. I don't care if you disagree with my opinions on the game so far. There is no excuse for such a terrible decision. The game is so hard already and in all the wrong ways, so to then lock the final level and boss behind 100%, that's just bad. Straight up bad. I mean, what do I tell you to do? Suffer through the levels and just stop the game after Mr. Scops? No, that would be stupid. But you know what the real kicker is? It's at the final level, the Candy Chateau is great. Mr. Dark curses you and has you deal with a Dark Rayman that copies your movements, has you deal with flip controls, or not being able to stop running, or riding a saucepan into a villain's lair. That's amazing. And what's sad is that I bet you 90% of players never saw this level. They never saw the finale where the Electoons rescue you and you take on a fairly decent final boss. I mean, it's lame that we don't fight Mr. Dark in his main form, but his imitations are hard but fair final bosses. How I managed to unlock this level when I was younger is a mystery even to myself, but Let me tell you, don't get all the cages. Fuck that, it's not worth the torment. Instead, beat all the levels and enter this password on the passcode screen, which will grant you access to the final level. I know it's cheating, but I don't care. Look, I beat Mr. Dark. It's over. Oh my god, it's over. I wish I didn't have to feel this way about a game that is so special to me, but this is terrible, man. Like, really, really bad. Most unaware players will be caught off guard by this game, I'm sure. Like, it's like for every good idea, they made the worst possible choice in how to implement it. Cool trumpets that push you around? That's too fun, make the platforms tiny. Let's let them fly with Rayman but fill every single part of the level with spikes. Let's make the players play perfectly and find every single stage to actually beat the game. That's so wrong, and I'll never get over it. Rayman isn't a game I can recommend, and it genuinely hurts me to say that. It'll always have a place in my heart thanks to the GBA version, and you know what, let's look at that real quick. So, yeah, it's Rayman, but with screen crunch in a game that constantly hits you from off screen. The music and the sound took a hit, as did the graphical fidelity, but it wasn't a bad attempt, I guess. It's just Rayman with all of its problems on a smaller screen. Great, but it still has nostalgia to me. I may love the original Rayman soundtrack, but the GBA version hits just as deep. It's nowhere near the quality, but I do appreciate the attempt to convert the songs into GBA rendition to the old tunes while maintaining the energy. And you know what? Fair play to them for trying to make the game a little bit easier. You have one extra hit point by default in this version, there's way more checkpoints as well as extra lives, and things don't disappear when you die. That's fair play, and I guess that explains how a younger me was able to beat this game. I really have nothing else to say though. I love everything about this game except the game itself. I'll never deny its creativity, its graphical fidelity, its soundtrack, but the gameplay?
You know, I'd rather not.
But we aren't done here. As not to end on a bad note, I remembered while recording this, oh yeah, wasn't there a fan remake of this game? Yeah, Rayman Redemption, right? Well, why not? Let's give it a go. And the verdict? Wow. There's actually a version of Rayman 1 out there that is not just fun, but fucking phenomenal. This is how my brain wants to remember Rayman. A super creative, super fun 2D platformer with amazing level design, great music, and brilliant ideas. Yeah, that sounds better. Just to say this now before I gush too much, I had some pretty bad performance issues trying to run this game in full screen. It runs fine in windowed, so I'm not sure why that's happening, but just be aware of that. But yeah, so this game is so much better. Why is it better? Well, casual mode removes extra lives, the resolution lets you see way more at once, your fists are much faster and more responsive, the health bar can actually be upgraded by opening cages, yes, actual rewards for breaking cages in the middle of the game, cages don't interrupt the game when broken, there's a level checklist on the map screen, knockback has been totally removed, thank god, there's new enemies, they changed lots of the level design to make it way less bullshit, bosses have more dialogue and there's even new bosses and new characters, it showers you in extra lives, you only lose one part of your fist speed upon death, oh my god, this is an amazing remake. In all seriousness, while all those things are great, what really gets me about this remake is that the changes to the level design are often subtle. But, you know, I still remember these sections from the original, but every single time, the small change makes a big difference. It makes the rocket maracas fun by giving you more view. It improves the trumpet sliding section by making the platforms bigger. It makes the combat better by having your fists travel further. It's tiny things, but it's amazing what a big difference they actually make. You also have most of your powers from the very start, such as the magic ledge grab of course, all the way to the sprint, which with the level design changes makes this game feel more like Rayman Origins and Legends, which is only a good thing, let me assure you. Rayman's hover now lasts until he hits the ground and the swinging is much more reliable, though still not perfect. That's not to say you don't have things to look forward to unlocking. You still have to unlock the little hoop guys to swing on, and as well as these springs which you can bounce on, the hoops that can send you flying if timed right, and these poles which you can climb like any other. These aren't really upgrades, more they allow you to reach more areas of old levels, and that might annoy me if they didn't change it so you can exit levels at any time while saving the cages you broke. They did change that however, and what a lifesaver it is. Being able to invest things into permanent health, as well as upgrading how powerful the P-power is, just makes the later parts of these games more enjoyable. I mean, I'm sure in this remake I could beat this game without these things, but who doesn't like extra health, right? The game is still challenging, it's not a walk in the park, especially bosses which often have new strategies thrown into the mix. But in general, it's more comfortable dealing with these guys as any attack that was just stupid in the original has been either removed or reworked. And they could have just stopped there, they could have easily. But Rayman Redemption adds in new ideas, new stages, new bosses entirely. You end up fighting this Dark Toon a lot, and I enjoy how he sort of gives context to the other bosses that we face. As in the original, we sort of just fight these guys because they're in our way. Gimmicks such as planting the beans to grow platforms and the mosquito flying shooter levels have been given much more attention, and they made entire levels for the mosquito, where he now shoots something out of his nose. But he can really rapid fire, like whoa, slow down there boss. These levels aren't anything more than a short distraction, but they are absolutely fun. And they even made a whole new world after the Cave of Scops called Playtopia, a world where everything is made out of Lego and other children's toys. You'll be bouncing basketballs, riding on RC cars, and running away from Thomas the Tank Engine. It's super creative, and points for acknowledging Rayman Brain games. I can't say I saw that coming, but it made me laugh. The ending will throw you off too if you're used to the original. So, not only do we have the new world, but upon arriving in the Candy Chateau, there's actually stages to complete with more cages to find. And these levels are pretty damn hard, I won't lie. It's far from impossible, but you have to be careful on how you approach these, because if you're too reckless, you're very likely going to have a bad time. Best part though, you don't need to break every cage to get here. Nope, cages are simply for more health, and you can even buy a cage tracker from Joe to locate any cage far more easily. It's great. And like I said earlier, you can quit the levels anytime when backtracking, so once you've got what you came for, just leave. That's amazing. Anyway, the final world eventually leads us to Mr. Dark's Dare, which is expanded upon greatly, giving us an even meaner Dark Rayman section, but you know what? I really enjoy this level. The final boss though, so Christ, the first phase is just like the original. Mr. Dark leaves to go and check if his laundry is dried, and you fight merged versions of the previous bosses. However, this remake adds even more bosses to this part, and Christ, look at that health bar. Now once you realise these bosses are totally predictable, 5 out of 6 of the bosses in this boss rush go down with little trouble. It's hugely overwhelming and requires a lot of trial and error, but I can beat most of this fight without getting hit. Most of it. As this prick throwing lava rocks mixed with the note bombs is just way too much. There are ways to learn how to dodge this, but this part was consistently annoying and was a little bit too far. Then, after you win this, you actually get to fight Mr. Dark in a pretty cool fight to be honest. It's hard as hell, but if you die you respawn here. I'm a little bummed that we lost the cool moment where the Electoons swoop in to save you, but it's a minor point, as Mr. Dark goes crazy after losing and flies up into the skies above and begins to tap into the power of the Great Protoon to destroy the world and cover it in his own darkness. We travel up this tower, which we've actually had access to for a while now but couldn't do anything with, and fly on our mosquito to catch up to him, with all of our friends seeing us off, including Darktoon here and Mr. Dark Turned On. It's cool to see everyone one last time, and we even end up in a standoff with Dark Rayman on his own mosquito. That's so cool. Then we climb the final tower and reach Mr. Dark, who honestly is pretty creepy. This guy has just totally lost it and wants to destroy everything. So we knock him down in a boss fight, which is absolutely challenging but totally fair and my favourite endgame boss. He explodes from the overwhelming power of the Great Protoon, which powers us up on the way down, allowing Rayman to escape with his life. The world is saved and it feels really good this time around. I really like how Rayman Redemption adds more to Mr. Dark to make him a far more memorable villain. The way he comes in and just takes matters into his own hands, then from pure frustration becomes an almost unkillable god. Of course, almost is the key word, no one can survive Rayman's punch. This is a great finale, but I will say, this game is pretty big. Now more content is always a plus, and I'm definitely more burnt out than I would have been otherwise, from playing the original, a bit of the GBA game, and the remake all in one go, but I still think it goes a little long. Just a nitpick though. There's a lot else you can do. You can collect these tokens to unlock super challenging bonus levels with the Magician, and these orb pieces which allows you to buy a whole bunch of skins in the shop for Rayman, the Mosquito, and even the Photographer. You can get Rayman to wear his combat fatigues from Rayman 3 here, oh my god. Rayman Redemption is an amazing time, filled with things to do, and I can't thank the creative team behind this enough for their hard work in making an actually playable version of my childhood classic. You could argue it goes a little far in some aspects, but look here. Now in which footage does it look like I'm having fun? I think the answer is obvious. To sum up the original Rayman, I don't think I could put it any better than Battilla the Fairy does in Redemption. Rayman? It's terrible! No amount of nostalgia can make me have a good time with this, and that makes me sad. Again, I love everything about this game except the game itself, and that's a bitter pill to swallow, let me tell you. What do I even say about Advance? Again, the memories are there, but despite the small improvements, there's just no point when Rayman Redemption exists. However, with this being a fan game, I do of course implore you to buy copies of the actual Rayman series to support it, and show Ubisoft that people do care about Rayman. And that is that. Well, that was an interesting trip down memory lane, but hey, what can you do? As always, thanks so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.